promised that I would never, ever not go to school again. So I went on back to school, but instead of starting in the 5th grade with my other 4th grade classmates, I didn't have a report card, so I had to go back to the 4th grade. So I started 4th grade all over again.
Wow.
And after that, of course, I got that got it out of my system. I loved school. I didn't care how the kids treated me. I wanted to be at school. And after that, I was probably one of your best attending kids in school. I dropped out of college because we just didn't have the money. My mother developed heart problems, and we just didn't have any money.
Oh.
This was in the early 50s, and I think my mother had me, and I know she had me, and she had my little brother. And she was just making $25 a week when I went to college. Theoretically, I shouldn't have been in college anyway. I should have been here waiting for that Willie Fay Battle lawsuit to get finished so I could go to Midwestern.
I had asked you yesterday what, how racism has changed from 1950 to 2017, and you said, I believe the answer was the subtleties.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on what you mean exactly about the subtleties of the racism and how that has changed?
Well, you know, back when racism was just rampant, people didn't hesitate to call you the N-word. They, you know, if they wanted to try to run some adult man off the sidewalk and make him, you know, walk to anything that they wanted to do, it was because it was not only de facto, it was de jure, because, you know, the law upheld the race. Part of the biggest racists were in law enforcement anyway. So nobody cared about how abusive they were. They just did it, and they did it openly. Now, sometimes it's words and phrases. Trump ran on take our country back, make America great again. But when you hear him talk, he talks about the period that I'm talking about where racism was just a way of life. No one would call me the N-word now and not expect to be hit. But then they did, and most black people would just not have raised a hand, because we were scared of the law, and the law favored them. We're still scared of the law because they kill us probably in as greater numbers as they always did. You can get stopped on a routine traffic thing and might get killed anyway. So, you know, you look at kids your age and younger. Sometimes I think that you're so you want things to happen now is because you've never seen the then. What you saw when you became of age to remember how things were was what we would have considered the best of the times. You know, when you were born in '73, I was already working at the courthouse. Right. Best job I had ever had, and had to go through a whole bunch of snakes over there, you know. But for you, and then by the time you got 10, 11, 12 years old, the changes weren't so rapid because they were already in process. They were different changes for me because I had, like when we went to California, when we got to either New Mexico or Arizona, the driver of the bus stopped and said, you know, there was a line that we crossed. I guess it was part of that's what we considered the South, and that any black people on here can sit anywhere you want to. Of course, we weren't black then. In fact, we were still colored back then. But you could sit anywhere you wanted to on the bus. But before that, you know, everything was relegated to the back of the thing. That was the first time I even knew that when he said it, because we had always done it. But then I realized that it was kind of legal, and he said you can move around, you can sit anywhere you want to on the bus. And I got to California, started going to school, and we'd go to school with children that I only had seen at a distance, and it was quite an eye-opener. They don't realize what we wanted more was the economic aspect of the integration more than the social aspects. Back in the early 70s, late 60s and early 70s, we had a problem with drugs, not the crack, but the like marijuana and a little bit of heroin and all that kind of stuff. And more kids on this side of town got hung up in the law enforcement side of it because the young cops, the young Department of Public Safety troopers and all who looked young, and they came to the east side and they started partying. And oh, they thought that was the coolest thing since Jack Daniel Black. And that's how they travel. You know, they'd show up and they'd party with them and they'd go home and they'd eat with them. And, you know, and then you'd hear these dudes in the courtroom say, I just can't believe he did that to me. And he would come and he started calling my mama, mama, you know, and all kinds of, and I said, you just were a fool. It meant too much to you to socialize with somebody that you didn't even know, you didn't even have anything in common with them. And we would have been a lot more leery, but we'd been there. So, and for yourself, and even now, there's not a thing on earth about you, even with having had some travails in life, that doesn't make you pretty special. And it's how you do what you want to do with the rest of your life that you map out. Because there are a whole bunch of folks, white folk, who have some pretty bad records. They just put it over here in this pile and figure out how they can work with it in spite of it. And you know you got 2 strikes against you. At that point you black and you got a record. So you just have to work with that 3rd strike you got left. In the valley of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. You know, I guess because each was different, I like the fact that I was the first black person not the first black person to run for public office, the first black person to win a public office, you know, where you had to be voted on by the people in your community. I like the idea of having done that. I like the idea of having not had to depend just on black people to put me there. But by that time, I had worked my tail off, and I expected other folk to vote for me. You know, I had proven myself in the community. Why? Mine is not why, mine is why not? And so I like that. But I really like the fact that wherever I worked and whatever I did, I ended up having a reputation where I was a good judge, I was a good judge as a black judge, I was a good judge. When I was on city council, I was a good counselor, you know, and that I would take a chance. And I still try, that's why I tell people if you want to run for something, run. But what if I don't win? Of course, a lot of folks don't win. But you ain't gonna win nothing if you don't run. And so, you know, like telling you about convincing the judge to order child support, that didn't have anything to do with running for the job, but I convinced him to do something that was good for everybody in the long run, that he never thought about. Judge Tips never ordered any woman to pay child support if she lost her children. If the wife got the custody, he always ordered the man to pay child support, but he never ordered a woman because they didn't make as much money. And I said, that child support is not to punish her, but they ought to be responsible for doing something for their children. How would you like for your kids to grow up and here, your mama never gave you a dime, and I said, it's just good for him. It's the thing to do. And he did it. Family court services used to be called the probation department. So I said, why do we call that probation department when it does adoptions, it does the investigations for adoptions, it collects the child support, payments that are made for child support, it also supervises the people who are on probation, but it does a whole bunch of stuff for the family. How come it? And I said, and it's not because the court orders it, why can't it be called something like family court services? And he said, that makes sense. So then he presented it to the commissioners that they need to change that name of the probation department to family court services. Now it's called that all over the state.
Well, do you think it was because of you?
Because it wasn't called that before. And then, because they finally realized that that's exactly what it is. When I went over there, the halls of the courthouse, have you been to the courthouse? The halls look really nice and neat. And I said, Judge Tips, why don't y'all have trash cans in the hallway? These people won't be throwing their junk all over the floor. So he said, well, I'll just see. And he contacted maintenance and he said, get us some trash cans, and we put them on the third floor. All of a sudden, the third floor is clean because they put the trash in the trash can. So then they put them all over the building. A simple act. But he was one who listened to me. Charlie paid attention. If there was something that came up, if I made sense, she tried to incorporate it into what we were doing in terms of the law practice, and it worked.
Oh, the Ann Richards story.
Okay, now I met Ann at the National Women's Conference. I met her at the State Women's Conference first. She was
What year was that?
probably 76. She was had won an election to the Commissioner's Court in Austin, which was a big deal for a woman because county commissioners generally are men, because they're in charge of the roads in a county and then they're in charge of keeping the budget for the county. So Ann was a commissioner, and she got elected to the to the national conference, as did I, and another person from here who ended up becoming the person in the United States who was in charge of the Episcopal Church's mission to Native Americans. She was an Indian woman, half Indian and half English. So she did that, and then I met Gloria Steinem, Bella Abzug, Coretta Scott King.
Wow.
If they were big in the women's movement, we met them.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, they talked about Bella Abzug, she's this New York woman and all. She was just like the rest of us. In Austin, 5 o'clock there, it's 6 o'clock in New York City. She was on the phone calling to find out whether her children had supper, whether they had, they talked about us burning our bras. There were no bras burned, but we were out there blazing a path for young women. And Gloria was just like everybody else, calling home to check on her children. And this was back when ultra suede was popular. Shoes, I saved my money to have me an ultra suede outfit when I went down there because, how together you were depending on how many ultra suede dresses you had when you went down there. So I met Ann and we all got to be friends. We heard that have you ever heard of the group called the Weathermen? It was a subversive group called the Weathermen. And we had heard that they were coming to Houston to assassinate somebody in the women's movement. And the police had just kind of quietly told us to be careful and pay attention to what's going on around you, because that's what had been heard, that they had gotten the word that they were going to come to Houston to assassinate somebody in the women's movement. And she was probably the leader of the pack. We go to conventions all day, and as soon as that thing was over, we found some bar to go to. And we talked war stories. So she said that she was going to run for a statewide post. And other than Ma Ferguson, there hadn't been a woman holding a state office at that time. So she let us know that she was going to run for state treasurer. So the very first fundraising thing she had was here. That Indian woman that I told you about, myself, and another woman who was a young, beginning woman lawyer, we had a big to-do for her for fundraising. She met all the people that we knew, and the Democratic Party was big then, so she remembered us. And from there on, she won too. She won as treasurer. And then a few years later, she said decided she was going to run for the governorship. And we said, we're in. We're with you all the way. And her expression used to be, honey, I'm with you till the last dog dies. So we became part of her bunch to help her win the Democratic thing. She remembered everybody who ever helped her. Her whole philosophy was you dance with the people that run you. And she always remembered us. And I got appointed to, she said, everybody get ready. And if you can run for an office, run for it. And I will be appointing people to state boards and commissions and you know, be ready. So we got appointments. She wanted me to contact one person to ask her. She was an attorney. She said, find out if she wants to be, you know, because she was ready to appoint. But she said, I'll never appoint anybody that's not qualified. So you had to be ready. I got appointed to the state board on family violence because we decided as part of what we were doing that too many women were being killed because police would come to a family disturbance, take the man away, drive him 2 blocks away and tell him, leave that woman alone, don't, you know, I'm going to come back and I'm going to put you in jail. And when they came back the next time, they did put him in jail because he'd gone back and killed her. So we got on the books back in the early 80s, a law that said if cop got called out on a family violence thing, it didn't matter. Somebody had to actually go to jail. Didn't care whether it was the man or the woman, but you were going to break up that situation then and there. And maybe overnight they'd have a chance to cool off. But they weren't going to go back within a matter of an hour or so and commit mayhem and all. And that if they got arrested, got written into the law that they also, the person reading them their rights could order them out of that household if they were living under the same roof for a period up to 90 days. Because what would happen then, a lot of times they would go back and they would intimidate, they would darn near kill somebody and then intimidate them to drop the charges. So it gave the victim a chance to collect their thoughts on what they wanted to do. But she appointed me to Juvenile Probation Commission, to that Commission on Family Violence, Job Training Partnership Act. Years ago, if you go back into the history of things, there was something used to be called JTPA. It was a Job Training Partnership Act. I was on that one. I got appointed to a commission or a board by every governor, from Governor Mark White, Bill Clements, and Richards. And then after Bush beat her, I didn't get any more appointments. But before then, I got appointed to a whole bunch of stuff. But the connection came through Ann Richards, even back to when she was treasurer. And we remained friends, all of us. Back, Sarah Weddington, who did Roe versus Wade, she was one of the good old girls. We would call the good old girls. I got interviewed by the newspaper from London, from New York, every major newspaper in the country, from Europe and all that kind of stuff. And that's why I said there's a lot of stuff if people really go back that's there. I don't know why sometimes I'm known as Beatrice, sometimes I'm known as Arthur Beatrice, and sometimes I'm known as Arthur B. And I think probably the stuff on me is probably in a collection of all sorts of. Yeah, because the Wichita Falls Time, I mean, I know they've done 100 stories on me over the years.
Right.
I was the darling of the newspaper in terms of favorable articles. And TV3 has done a lot over the years to do things. But I made Texas Monthly.
See?
A long time ago.
Texas Monthly was the
Talking
biggest,
about the
magazine.
good old girls. There's an article about probably 77, if you can find it, talking about the good old girls. So Ann would say, you can't win, honey. You can't win if you don't run.
Right.
And so that's what we developed the attitude. If we wanted to try something, we just tried. And we got access to the bigger picture through her. Do you ever hear about Molly Ivins, the writer Molly Ivins, who was, because every once in a while you'll hear them now on national news saying, Molly Ivins is dead now, but she was a political satirist. And like with Trump, you'll hear him saying, what would Molly Ivins say? Because she was scathing in her reviews of people, and she wrote a lot for the Texas Monthly. If you read up on Molly Ivins, she was something else. She could put the pen to you, and make you feel about this big. Yeah. And when Ann heard that I was going to run for city government, she knew that I ran for county stuff because she was running long about the same time that she ran from beyond county commissioner to state treasurer. But then when she heard that I was running for city council, and I told her who was running against me, and I said, he worked for you. I said, he was director of the transportation department for the state of Texas. And she said, oh, hell, I know who that is. Said, I fired him because he didn't want to promote women. And so she said, I'm going to send you some money. I'm going to send you enough money that you have to show it on your list of contributors. Because there's an amount at which they can give money to your campaign. You don't have to show it. You have to show credit for it, but you don't have to list it item person by person. But beyond a certain point, you have to show it. So she gave me she sent the amount of money that it definitely had to show up that Ann Richards sent me money for my campaign. And she said, and if you need to know anything, you let me know. And I will tell you everything that you need to know. Because she said, he worked for me, and that's why he isn't working for me. So then when she got sick, I'd write her, and I got a letter from her probably 2 weeks before she died. Saying, I'm going to beat this. She had a potty mouth just like me. That's how everybody starts. You probably start out by doing something else, and then you develop a friend or friendship with somebody who encourages you, because that's what happened to me. And the young woman who along with Owana Anderson, who helped, together we did the first party for Ann. When I ran for judgeship, she had established a law practice, and Juanita Pavlik, who became a judge, and Carol Campbell were practicing law together. So they opened up their law office after 5 o'clock for my campaign headquarters.
Oh, wow.
On Travis Street, down there between 7th and 8th Street, was where my campaign office was. It became known as the Beehive. And all of our meetings were there. had the first party that I had there. But that's, and Carol and I are still friends. She lives in Austin and we're still friends. She works for the state of, she just retired working for the state of Texas. She worked for the Attorney General's office, and she interpreted all the codes and the laws handed down through the federal government to see how they would apply to the legal system in Texas, and that was her job at the Attorney General's office.
Has there been progression made as far as community growth economically in the last 45 years to current date? And if not, what in your opinion is the holdup? What is the problem? Why is there not more black businesses here?
There's been financial growth,
Okay.
but we put it in our pocket instead of paying it back now. You know, if you notice, if we open a business, we open it up across town. You'll hear us bragging about how big our savings accounts is and how big our checking accounts are, but we don't put any money back in the neighborhood. We don't even buy homes in the neighborhood anymore. You know, the houses that are remaining are those of us who've lived in the neighborhood forever. When I got the judgeship thing, everybody said, well, you gonna move? You gonna move to the other side of town? No, why should I move to the other side of town? I own that house. And, you know, but you can afford to live anywhere you wanted to. And I said, I might be able to live where I want to, but that's where I happen to want to live. So I live there. And too many of us don't even buy houses in the neighborhood or don't even build houses in the neighborhood. And anything is going to die if it's not watered or enhanced. And that's what's happening. We just don't put anything back into our neighborhoods. We don't even, our kids, you know, mamas and daddies work hard to get houses. And then they work on them, keeping them up. And children lived in, it was good enough for them to live in until they got out of high school and went somewhere and got a job. And then when the parents died, they will even keep the house up. I could see where you wouldn't want to move from Dallas back to Wichita Falls because you had a job there and you had a career. But I don't see how you could let that house sit there, close the door, not do a thing for it, don't even rent it. And you know, it's called a dead house syndrome, a house that nobody lives in. It dies quicker than a house that somebody's in. And then the house just deteriorates. And the next thing you know, there's a red tag on it. Then the next thing you know, it's being demolished. And it was a perfectly good house that could have at least been rented, could have been rehabbed and rented under Section 8. When my daughter bought a house on Andrews Drive. And so because neither one of us had ever lived by ourselves, she said, well, Mama, since I have a house, will you live in the house with me like I live in the house with you? So I said, okay, as long as I pay my way, you know, you didn't get a chance to live off me, so if I live in your house, I'll pay my way to live with you. So my mother was living in public housing, and they were renovating her house. I let her stay in my house while a year that it took them to renovate her house. And then when she left, I renovated my house and rented it to the same girl for 15 years, but it didn't sit there idle in the neighborhood because we had moved over on Andrews Drive. You know, because I had a house at the corner of Rosewood and Gerald Street. And I sold it in 2011, but for 15 years, somebody rented that house.
So it sounds like you're saying that it's not a problem of money, of economic resources. The money is being made, the money is there. The problem is we're not developing the community.
Right. We don't even, we act like we don't even see a need. It's like, why, you know, like I tell you about how they were able to capture them when they were making these stings in the neighborhood because everything is better on that side of the tracks, which is a fallacy. You know, if I renovate my house and you live across the street and you renovate your house and then the person over here renovates and Next thing you know, our neighborhoods begin to look really good again. But our people won't do it. There's a thing on TV now called The Fixer Upper. It's in Waco. Somebody, you ought to get a house. Next time you see a house that's on the block for $4,000 or $5,000 because it's just about ready to be thrown down. Get it, pay taxes on it, and if you have to renovate it from the outside so it looks good, then if you have to do one room at a time until it gets to be a nice looking place, and then sell it, but don't try to sell it for so much that it sits there empty.
Right.
And deteriorates again. Sell it to get somebody in, take your profit and put it back into something else. Remember I told you to work on something that you can use the rest of your skills. And if you have some craftsman skills, put them to work for yourself. And then when you're able to hire another person, even part-time, get them to help you. And there's not a thing on earth that you can't, and I want you to really remember that. And some of the things that you wanted to do, put those things aside and then figure out, how can I do what I really want to do? What do I need to do with the rest of what I have left? And then do it. And if you only do it one day the way you wanted to do, that beats no day when you never did it. So you just get after it. You're still very special, and and remember I told you, you have to, the one thing that I always did, I always believed in me, and you have to do it. And don't wait for other folk to give you validation. You just have to, take your own ticket and stamp it yourself.